Breaking news. 8 of Britain's most senior 4-star generals have issued a chilling warning to the Prime Minister. Now, the country's most elite soldiers are preparing to take the government to court. The SAS Regimental Association threatens legal action over new legislation it claims could put the entire nation at risk. This is not noise from the sidelines. These are men who led some of the most dangerous counter-terror operations in modern British history, and their message is blunt. Either the Prime Minister doesn't understand the consequences of his decisions, or he understands them perfectly and simply doesn't care. This isn't a simple legal case. It's a direct challenge to how Britain treats the men and women who risk their lives to protect it, with ramifications far beyond Northern Ireland. Tonight, we break down exactly what happened, why the SAS is furious, and what it means for every serving member of the British Armed Forces. If you want the truth behind the headlines politicians hope you'll never see, hit subscribe now. We follow every twist, expose every move, and this story is far from over. Labour has formally abolished the Legacy Act, a contentious yet crucial statute that once protected veterans from prosecution for decisions taken during the Troubles. For those who may not know, the Troubles were 3 decades of relentless sectarian violence. British soldiers and police officers lived under a constant threat from IRA terrorists, including bombs, assassinations, shootings, and ambushes. In a setting where the enemy wore no uniform and hid in the midst of civilian residents, split-second decisions determined life or death. The Legacy Act was far from perfect. Critics labeled it as an amnesty, but for those who had served under impossible conditions, it offered something essential: closure. No more endless investigations. No more civil cases decades later. No waking up at 70 years old to be questioned about a firefight in 1978. Now, everything is reopening. At least 9 inquests are being reopened. Veterans in their 60 seconds and 70 seconds. Men who followed orders and did their duty may again face prosecution for decisions taken in their early 20 seconds. In the fog of war, Prime Minister Starmer insists there's nothing to worry about. Speaking abroad at the G20 in South Africa, he claimed there would be no vexatious prosecutions, that safeguards exist, and that the system is balanced. But the SAS isn't convinced, nor are the 8 retired 4-star generals, the Air Chief Marshal, or the Royal Ulster Constabulary veterans standing with them. In a blistering statement, the SAS Regimental Association declared that Starmer was either poorly briefed or blindly accepting a deeply flawed plan from the Northern Ireland office. This isn't polite disagreement. This is accusing the Prime Minister of being either uninformed or willfully blind to obvious danger. The generals invoked a principle every government fears, that the first duty of government is the defense of the realm. The generals' logic is stark and simple. If soldiers know they can be prosecuted 40-50 years after carrying out orders, why would anyone volunteer for the most dangerous missions? How does exposing veterans to endless legal jeopardy make Britain safer, especially as global threats escalate? This isn't theory, it's already happening. The British Army is already below target, with the Navy and RAF under similar pressures. Just imagine telling recruits, serve your country, fight our battles. But in 50 years, depending on political winds, you might be dragged into court for following orders. Who would accept those terms? Former Lieutenant Colonel Simon Barry, who served with the Parachute Regiment during some of the worst years of the Troubles, says neither the veteran community nor the Royal Ulster Constabulary trusts Starmer's assurances. Think about that. The Ruck, the very police who faced bombs, bullets, and death threats, also do not trust the government. These are not alarmists. These are people who made life or death decisions under unimaginable pressure. They know the difference between legal protection on paper and protection in practice, and they are saying it doesn't work. Barry went so far as to describe the Republic of Ireland's involvement in these investigations as a betrayal to IRA victims, certainly, but also to the very idea of UK national sovereignty. Let that sink in. British soldiers could face prosecution influenced by a foreign government, the very nation that provided sanctuary to IRA operatives during the Troubles. This isn't about abstract legal procedures. It's about who gets to judge British service personnel for protecting British citizens on British soil. One of the most striking moments for Starmer came during Prime Minister's questions when Conservative MP Mark Francois asked the hard questions. Starmer may be a good lawyer, but he has never seen military service. On what grounds, therefore, does he think he knows more about the issue of veterans protection than 8 retired 4-star generals, 1 Air Chief Marshal, and the SAS itself? The room was silent. Francois wasn't attacking Starmer's intellect or motives. He was attacking his experiential authority. And Starmer had nothing to say. This isn't some abstract debate about rights or legal safeguards. It's about real-life consequences for individuals who risked everything for their country. Picture this. You're 23 inches Belfast, stationed at a checkpoint. A car suddenly accelerates toward you. You have 2 seconds to decide. Is it a suicide bomber or a confused civilian? You make that call and you live with it. Now, 50 years later, a prosecutor who wasn't there, operating under laws that didn't even exist at the time, is going to judge whether you made the right choice. What veterans are concerned about are not theoretical protections in legislation. Rather, they're concerned about political prosecutors, ideological lawyers, and a legal system that treats combat operations as if they were ordinary policing. Here's what Starmer either doesn't understand or refuses to acknowledge. Even if the charges never stick, even if a veteran is eventually cleared, the process itself is punishment. Legal costs run into hundreds of thousands of pounds. Life savings wiped out, homes remortgaged, families bankrupted, reputations destroyed, names splashed across newspapers. Neighbors who have known you for decades suddenly wonder if you're a monster. The psychological trauma is devastating. Imagine being 72, believing you had made peace with your past, only to be dragged back into it, reliving the worst moments of your life, defending split-second choices made as a barely grown teenager. This isn't justice. It's cruelty dressed up as accountability. Those urging these prosecutions on know exactly what they are doing. Even failed cases achieve their goal, punishing veterans, deterring serving service members, and rewriting history to cast the British soldiers as aggressors instead of defenders. The Legacy Act of the Conservative era had already been judged to breach the European Convention on Human Rights, and any law offering real protection is vulnerable. Labor's approach tries to thread a needle offering some protections while satisfying human rights obligations. But those who actually served, who truly understand what operating in Northern Ireland meant, say it does not work in practice. Protections are vague, dependent on prosecutorial discretion, and far too exposed to political influence. That is why the SAS Regimental Association is not making idle threats. They are preparing a judicial review to challenge the legislation in court. When one of the most respected special forces units in the world refers to your law as dangerous nonsense, no press release can spin that away. These are people with expertise and resources, with overwhelming public support. Recent polling shows that 68% of Britons oppose prosecuting the veterans for their actions during the Troubles. Even among Labour voters, support is weak. The government knows this is a political minefield, and yet they proceed. Partly this is due to promises made to Northern Irish political parties, partly ideological commitments to human rights law, and partly because reversing course now would be an admission of catastrophic error. The debate becomes even more difficult when considering victims' families. Some have waited 40 or 50 years for inquests that were suddenly cancelled. Mothers who never learned how their sons died. Fathers who could not confront those responsible. In their view, justice may be delayed, but it should not be denied. The Legacy Act shut doors that, arguably, should have been left open. But to the veterans, it is political persecution dressed up as accountability. They adhere to rules of engagement signed off by the government, adhere to orders from politically appointed commanders, and battle terrorists who adhere to no rules whatsoever, hiding among civilians, bombing pubs, murdering children. Decades later, those veterans are judged by people who weren't there, under laws that didn't exist at the time, in a climate that treats soldiers and terrorists as morally equivalent. As one veteran succinctly put it, "We were sent to do an impossible job under impossible rules, and we did it. We prevented massacres, and now we're being told we're the villains." The situation is further complicated by the European Convention on Human Rights. Laws robust enough to protect veterans face legal challenges. Laws weak enough to satisfy human rights, lawyers offer almost no protection. There may be no solution that fully satisfies both sides. Then there is the Republic of Ireland. The new framework will grant Irish authorities a role in the investigation of British forces. To many veterans, this is the ultimate insult. Throughout the Troubles, Ireland's government never fully confronted IRA. Terrorism gave succor across the border and obstructed extradition. Now, they stand to judge the very soldiers who fought that terrorism. Not just individual cases, but rather about sovereignty and national legal authority, culminating in what the future may hold for Britain's military. If veterans of the Troubles are not able to be protected, then who would volunteer for conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, or any future wars? Legal jeopardy that never expires. This is a political win that may shift decades later. Who would step forward under those conditions? Here is the current reality. A prime minister who has never worn a uniform telling some of Britain's most decorated soldiers that they are wrong about their own safety. 8 four-star generals, an air chief marshal, and the SAS Regimental Association declared this legislation dangerous. Veterans who fought terrorism are now preparing to take their own government to court. Starmer says, "Trust the system." The SAS says, "The system is broken. Someone is right, someone is wrong." And Britain's ability to defend itself, recruit elite soldiers, and operate in hostile environments may hinge on the outcome. This isn't about the past, it's about the future. It's about whether Britain stands by the people who stand for Britain, or whether service and sacrifice mean nothing when the political winds change. What do you think? Do you believe soldiers who fought IRA terrorists in the 72nds and 82nds should be prosecuted today? Or is Labour justified in reopening these cases to see justice done? Put your thoughts in the comments. This is a debate of great import, and we want your voice. If you want to follow this legal battle, see how the judicial review unfolds and whether Starmer backs down or doubles down, then subscribe and turn on notifications. This fight is only just beginning, and we'll cover every move.